Ruben Anthony was on a Zoom with a Federation event, and he said that they've got volunteers that are taking people to the polls.
Okay. So
I'm
you just,
wondering if the League of Women Voters might not have that information as well.
okay.
Common Cause is the one to contact. They've been coordinating rides around the whole state.
Who's that?
Common Cause of Wisconsin.
Okay, so Common Cause or the Urban League, Common Cause might be a good place to start because you think they might know some other agencies that are doing that as well.
They might have a phone number to call where you can find more information.
Yeah, that's good to know about Union Cab. I wonder how many people they wind up.
Quite a
seeing.
few, I bet.
You think so?
Union Cab also will do, they won't do early vote, but they will take people, it's getting pretty late in the game here, but for people wanting to register who didn't, or people wanting to vote who don't have either a driver's license, passport, or a Wisconsin ID, they would give free rides to DMV for people to get an ID. I actually had someone who took advantage of that, and they got their Wisconsin ID because they weren't driving anymore.
Right.
They needed the ID, and then they were able to vote using the ID.
Yeah. So Union Cab is still doing that?
They are doing it. Yep, they'll do DMV and they'll do November 3rd, but they won't do early vote.
All right. Well, that's good to know, and maybe something we should add. So I'm going to throw up this slideshow and then see.
And as you do it, I'm gonna go just put my off video because
Okay.
I'm putting my phone in my pocket
Okay.
while you're zooming. So I'm just listening.
All right. Okay. So just let me know if we need any edits here. I'm gonna put this, whoever's speaking up on here. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna put that up and you're gonna put, I mean, I guess it's still okay to tell people to mail ASAP. It's you know, in a couple of days, I'd say that that's dicey depending. Am
Yeah.
I correct? The Supreme Court has not ruled on the Wisconsin law, so to see whether there's 3 extra days of,
Yeah, I wouldn't trust it though.
you know, I wouldn't expect it. It's probably gonna go 4-4 and then it'll be a net no. But it's kind of odd that they just haven't issued a ruling since they did rule in the Pennsylvania case, and it's pretty similar issue.
Yeah. So yeah.
But I mean, the mail is, you know, the mails have been, I mean, I saw in the news last night that Tammy Baldwin was saying that you know, there've been real mail delays in Dane County. I know we got our ballot in the mail from the clerk one day after they mailed it, which was kind of, according to their website, they said the day they mailed it and we had it the next day. So we didn't mail it back, we dropped it off, but you know, I haven't heard people complaining about mail delivery
Yeah.
in this election context, but
I had the same experience. I had, you know, it took 2 or 3 days to get it and 2 or 3 days for them to receive it. So it seemed to go smooth, but yeah, but I wouldn't.
I mean, the only thing you might say, Paul, is it says if you have your absentee ballot mail as ASAP, you might add, you know, if it's later than say October 25th, I'd say if at all possible, drop it off.
Yeah.
Don't mail it after that. I think that's getting risky.
So if it's within a week to just drop it off. And do you know, there's no restriction about somebody else dropping it off at a,
There is no restriction.
There is no restriction.
so they can go to the city clerk or one of them early voting places.
Right, and you know, they don't have to go to the city clerk's office. I mean, they need to go to this, if, you know, if they're not using a Dropbox. First of all, they actually could drop it off at any early voting site
Uh-huh.
or a drop box.
Right.
Or if they go downtown, there's somebody standing outside. Now there's curbside people, right? So they don't have to go in the building.
Correct.
I
Yes,
just,
I worked yesterday and I'll be working tomorrow, but there are people out there, they're in green, like glow green vests, so you know they're
Right.
official. You don't just hand it to anybody who comes up to your window. We were even processing absentee ballots to be mailed to people still yesterday. But again, you know, that I'm not concerned about people requesting absentee ballots so late because of all the places where they can be delivered or dropped off without having to go through the mail. But like you said, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if the post office is taking extra care just because they're under such scrutiny right now. But that's
Mhm.
my opinion, you know.
So you, and when you're at the city county building, because I know when I dropped it off, this was, 3 weeks ago, so it was well before early vote started. The person that was outside was in front of the door, was not curbside, so I actually had to park
Correct.
my car and then
Correct.
go up the steps. Right now, are people actually on the curb?
There is curbside right now.
Okay.
It started Tuesday.
So Paul, I think I'd add that because that I think would be appealing to people.
Yeah, so you're talking about adding that you can go curbside to early voting.
Yeah, I mean, you don't, or for an absentee ballot return, if you're returning an absentee ballot, and you've got on the slide, city clerk's office, but it's more like city county building curbside. So people know they don't actually have to park their car. And some people may not want to go in the building and go into the clerk's office. They don't have to.
Or might
They
be,
also can drop ballots at any early voting site in
Yeah.
addition to drop boxes. So and those are not the same places because the drop
Right.
boxes are at the fire stations. So
Right.
there's really probably, 20 different places you can drop a ballot.
right.
one
Yeah.
thing to note, just to chime in, I just received an email message saying that 5 in-person absentee voting sites are closed today because of the weather.
Hmm.
Oh.
And they're primarily libraries as well as Madison College.
Right.
So,
And part of that is because they're using computers, that I think part of it is concern for the people and also
Right.
for the computers
right.
And
when
I'm
there's a
guessing
storm.
on
The information's a
campus-
little bit fluid, but it sounds like, I'm guessing that the city clerk's office is a place to check for the most up-to-date real-time information.
Yep, and I'm guessing on campus, they probably moved everything into the
Right.
Memorial Union.
So all to the point of, making a plan, I'm making a backup plan, I'm making a backup plan to your backup plan.
Yeah,
So any changes here? Yeah, so here I put that in early voting location, but I forgot that on the original slide. Whoops. Yeah,
yeah, and again, where it says clerk's office, you could say city county building curbside
okay.
rather than clerk's office.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Mm-hmm. And we think that that's the same thing when you go to the early voting place, if you request, like if you're bringing somebody who has a walker or wheelchair in the car, that you can get somebody to come curbside at the early voting locations too.
That I don't know.
I don't know that for sure. I think it depends on availability, but I would think they would do it if they could possibly do it. If they've got someone there that's trained, that,
Right,
and is available.
yeah. Okay. Let's go to the next one.
That's something that you might send an email off to My Vote Wisconsin, to see if that's, if,
And
which
actually,
sites, if any, will do curbside beside the city county building.
and looking at paragraph 5, Paul, you have covered the curbside in front of the city building, so it is there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, but we could probably put it in.
Maybe
red.
consolidate that with number 1, and then you don't need 5,
Yeah,
and put it up at 1, because people may not get down if, you know.
right. Okay, so we'll put the 5 to the 2. You know, I was interested that they did have a lot of other sites besides fire stations with the drop boxes, a lot of community centers, apartment complexes.
Yeah, I mean, people have plenty of choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you want to somehow, mention that when they're dropping them off, it does not have to be at a location near where they vote.
Right.
Right.
Except on, I don't know if on actual voting day, you need to drop it off at your actual
I think
ward.
you have to take it to your polling place. I'm polling, you actually, and it's not your, well, it's not the early vote because the early vote's done, but it's your actual polling place is where you
Right.
take it.
Yeah.
So
So
that
what
might
like
be
that
something
is an
to just
option.
emphasize that prior to election day, it can be dropped off.
Yeah. So November 3rd, you have to go to your polling places. And I saw people doing that at my polling place on the during the primary. Okay. So that looks good. And maybe this place might be a good place to add the Union Cab and the common.
Yes,
Or
yep,
maybe
I
even-
agree. Yeah,
maybe
that's,
even
Yeah.
would
add
be
another
good.
slide to that. Okay. So, does this still look right, or have we had any changes?
So that's national, and I think that, you know, I think that that's, you know, I heard 30 million.
Mhm.
And I did, the thing that I sent out this morning, I actually, someone said to me, well, why did you only look at 2016 with Clinton and Trump? Why didn't you also look at 2012? Which was, so I actually, I haven't sent it to you, but I did it myself. I went back and I found a website that had all the information, and we'll get to that.
Okay.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah,
So
we'll
I'll
get
hold that thought.
some of the county numbers too, I guess. Yeah. So this is encouraging, just the number of votes that have been taken so far.
I
This
saw I was watching MSNBC 2 days ago, and they had some guru on who was analyzing the early vote between trying to extrapolate between Trump and Biden. And he said that in Wisconsin, he put some numbers on the board, and he said that Biden had 100,000 vote lead. But his numbers were really off because the total number of votes that he showed for the two of them was about 250,000 less than what the election commission is showing. And that was 2 days ago. So, you know, some of the stuff you see on TV is, take it with a grain of salt, because I think, you know, these people that come on and talk don't have the latest figures. And I mean, I looked at what this guy was saying and I thought, this is completely off base, what this guy's saying.
And in the past week, I saw Dave Matthews of Dave Matthews Band, oddly enough, speaking to somebody saying, you know, Americans do not exercise their right to vote in the numbers that other countries do. And that is, it's just bizarre that we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I mean, look at the graph. I mean, the highest vote totals were like, you know, a long time ago.
Yeah. So 1840.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting graph. to
Pretty
show.
bad.
100. Yeah. Yeah.
Disturbing.
There was an interesting tidbit that I saw. I don't remember if it was a state or whatever. They have more absentee ballots now than they had total votes last time. So just in absentee ballots alone, they were
Right.
higher.
Yeah. Well, that's
But the caveat that some of them were saying was that Democrats tend to absentee vote and Republicans tend to show up on
Right. on
election day.
Yep.
So
So
all
be
these things
wary.
we're seeing have to be tempered by that.
okay.
Who was
And the,
running in 1984?
19, what's the question?
Who was running in 1984 when that, since we
Oh.
haven't,
It was, let's see, in 1984, it would have been Reagan and Mondale.
I was wondering if that was.
You know, making the comparison between 2016 and 2012 in Wisconsin, Trump actually got about 3,000 fewer votes than Romney got. But Clinton got something like 240,000 fewer votes than Obama got.
Yeah.
And so that was, and when I did this, when we get to it, I'll share what I'm looking at from 2012. It's kind of surprising in the comparison I was making.
So this has all gone up.
Right, so I had current figures as of this morning through yesterday. But in 2012, I mean, just if you compare Dane and Milwaukee as one unit and the 3 WOW counties as a separate unit, in 2016, the net to Clinton in that comparison was 204,404. In 2012, surprisingly, the net to Obama was only 169,751. That's Milwaukee and Dane minus the WOW counties. And part of that was because the WOW counties turned out much heavier for Romney than they did for Trump. Trump didn't do well in the WOW. You know, remember Trump lost the Wisconsin, got crushed in the Wisconsin primary by Cruz. And there were a lot of people, you know, in the suburbs of Milwaukee that really didn't go for Trump, Republicans that stayed home or whatever. So it's kind of interesting and surprising.
So Jim, did you want to go through any of this that you sent this morning?
Is that what I sent this morning?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Well, it just looks, what, couple things that struck me is in the early vote, Waukesha has had 18,782 people vote in person in the first 2 days. And Dane County has had 13,932. So Dane County is underperforming Waukesha,
Mhm.
fairly significantly in the 2 days of early vote. On the other hand, Dane County was, way overperforming in the mail vote.
Mhm.
So, that's maybe the low hanging fruit was already gone because people had already voted. People like us voted absentee and turned our ballots. And so, we're not voting early because we've already voted.
Yeah.
So in Milwaukee has 20,320 after 2 days of early vote, which is only a couple thousand more than Waukesha on the early vote. And of course, you don't know what those votes are.
Right.
The early vote in the WOW counties, a lot of it could be Democrats. I mean, you just don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I mentioned earlier, that they expect a lot of the absentee votes to be more Democratic, more of the in-person to
heavily
be
more.
Republican. So their point being, don't be overly optimistic about what's going on, because come election day, things could change dramatically.
Right.
Although we have, is it like 1/3 of the vote is in?
Yeah, because in,
In the state or in the county, 1/3.
in the state,
State.
in 2016, there were a total, including the lesser candidates, the total number of votes in Wisconsin was 2,976,150. So slightly more than a third of the vote, because already there's like 1.1
Yeah.
absentee ballots, meaning mail plus in person. And so that's, slightly more, it's maybe like 34-35% of the total 2016 vote is in. And in 2012, the total vote, there were more votes in Wisconsin in 2012 than there were in 2016. The total votes in Wisconsin, including the minor party candidates, were 3,067,928. And that was roughly 90,000 more votes in 2012 than 2016 statewide. But, even with those, even at that number, we're at a third or more, slightly more already in.
I'll be curious as to what the final number will be on the number of people who registered for this particular vote. How much of an increase.
How many of us really vote? Mhm.
Because over the last couple of weeks when I've been down at the city county building, there seemed to be a semi-steady flow of people who were registering to vote, because they did that right in the lobby.
Mhm.
Well, I was not on that floor. I was upstairs, but anyway, especially students,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah.
because
I
a
was
number of
at,
the student locations were closed because of COVID and whatnot. So the fellow who was doing that was somewhat surprised at the beginning at how many students walked up to the city county building in order to register versus if they had been able to on campus. So that was a pleasant surprise.
On March 12th, and I remember the date because I was at the clerk's office and I was being a witness for, early absentee votes. And it was primarily students. And, considering that, it was a Supreme Court race. And
Right.
it struck me that, wow, there was a steady stream of, it wasn't like swarming, but there were, a steady number of students that had walked up to the county building to vote in this Supreme Court race. And it was mainly students. And I think, with students, when I worked at Union South in 2018 for the midterms, I'd say, 40% of the people coming in needed to register before they voted. So there was a lot of same-day registration.
That was on campus you're talking about?
That was at Union South, and that was that was for Evers and Tammy's election, and there was especially the last couple of days, there were really a lot of people. Roughly 40%. I mean, the ones that didn't need to re-register had registered at all these different events that had been happening in the fall, registration events.
Yeah.
But for a student, even if they move across the hall in their dorm, they have to re-register. If they're in a different room,
Yeah.
they need to re-register with a change of address.
They were talking about that, about address changes and how students, even if they move across the hall, like you said, or next door, they have to put in a change of address.
Right.
So is
Yeah, no, it was crazy in there.
Have anybody seen numbers about students? Because it seems like this would be kind of a havoc year and a down year for students because they're not on campus or they're in transit. The rules are changing about whether or not they can be there or not. So it seemed like that would be a significant depressed student.
I would expect it'll be, and now with the early vote and having it outside and having the weather being what it is,
Yeah.
that's, going to be a bit of a deterrent as well. I'm sure I would expect it would be down from what it was. Hopefully these students are going to be voting. The ones from Wisconsin are going to be voting, and if they're not voting in Madison, then they'll vote in their hometowns, which they can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be interesting to see if somebody had studied what happened with all the students, because it seems like they're definitely in a state of flux. More so than before. So Roz, has there been any change in the amount of the volume of absentee ballots lately? Have they been going?
I would say yes, because, like I said, we had the room I was in used to have 6 people in it, spaced out tables so that you could work on various aspects of the absentee ballot. Yesterday, there were only 4 of us. Well, 3.5, because the fellow went out and he did curbside for a while and then he was in the room. So dramatically, the volume has changed.
What is your job that you're doing? What were you doing yesterday?
Yesterday, we did 2 different things. One was to put labels on the outside and inside envelopes for people who had requested ballots, and then send that went down to the printer, and then they came back with the actual ballot, because there are 124 wards, and I would say there are probably 30 to 50 different styles of ballot.
Mhm.
Obviously, because the different wards have different people running for their district, and some districts are split in as to whether they are in the Madison School District or not, because the Madison School District has a referendum. So even within a particular ward, you might have two different styles of ballot because of that. So
So I have a question. I thought that the election, that for every registered voter in Wisconsin for every registered voter that had requested an absentee ballot, they would be mailed an absentee ballot. And that had, the big push was right at the beginning, because you had on file all these people like myself that just has a standing request for an absentee ballot. And so the ones you're dealing with now are people who have recently made a request. Maybe they just, recently registered and they're requesting an absentee ballot, because, the question is, why weren't they mailed an absentee ballot 3 weeks ago?
I believe what you're saying is true, that these are new requests, not people who are on a permanent send me a ballot.
Yep.
Yeah. So do we know how many, is the count being updated about how many ballots were sent out, absentee ballots?
I mean, you can look on the site and it tells you in column 2, it tells you the number of absentee, and column 1 tells you the number of requests. Number 2 tells you the number that have actually been mailed. And if you look at it and compare it, I mean, you can look at it day over day and see what's happening. And it seemed to me like maybe there were a couple thousand that were requested between Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah.
So it's definitely slowing down big time on the absentee ballots, which it should, because
Yeah,
people need to get them back, and it's pretty late in the game to be requesting a mail ballot at this point.
So does this number look right, Roz, that over?
you know that I don't, they keep track of that myself, so I can't say one way or another.
How about on
but-
the returned end? Do you have an idea about that with this return number of 146,500?
No, I know the other day there was all kinds of hooray that we had over 100,000 returned. That was a milestone of that. So
Okay,
And you're talking city of Madison. For Dane County,
yeah,
no, I'm
that's
talking
what you
Dane
had
County.
on the screen, today's number, meaning through yesterday, updated as of this morning, the number of ballots that had been, absentee ballots that had been returned for mail was 154,953.
okay,
And then there were 13,932 people that had voted in person early. And so
that
in
was
the third
yesterday.
column of the Election Commission's spreadsheet, they show the total absentee ballots, and it was 168,885 as of the close of yesterday. Those are the mail ballots plus the in-person vote.
Right.
So you can see, it's going up, it's going up a little each day. But it's, the pace is definitely slowing day over day in terms of the mail ballots.
Yeah.
Which you would expect, and so the not only, let's say in the one room I was in, did they pull back the number of people, but there used to be 2 shifts, now there's only 1. Now that 1 shift has an extra hour or so, but
But the
just
other
dramatic.
thing that
Where
is-
they've added people and time is in the area where we are sorting the returned ballots by ward and then putting them in the ward boxes alphabetically. And so I remember when we first started, every day by the end of the shift, all the ballots that had been received had been placed in their proper place in the boxes. Last night when I left, there were huge stacks, because they have a basket at the end of each row. People who are doing the sorting then put them in, I'm sorry. So each row of boxes, let's say their first one is wards 1 through 10. So there's a box at the end. So if people who are sorting put those in there for someone else to come and put them in the ward boxes. So last night there were probably 6 or 8 of those boxes that had not been completely merged into the ward boxes. So that was just a standout thing for me, because I'd been so used to that always being, all those being emptied by the time we left.
Right.
But I'm not worried about it, because, obviously they have more people coming in this morning to work on doing that merging, but it just struck me that, well, it makes sense that you're going to have more of that as people return their ballots. And
To be sure. That was Jim Mack when I just disappeared. He made a call to me to say hello.
Okay.
And he says he's feeling great, really surprised. He went out for a brief jaunt today before it rained. He needed some small ice water bottles. He had knee replacement surgery on